Back to our top story, and Labor's centrepiece housing policy has been blocked by the Greens and Coalition. So what impact will that have on the budget? Joining me live from Canberra is Greens housing spokesperson Max Chandler-Mather. Max, thanks so much for joining us on First Edition this morning. Really appreciate it. So the Greens joined the Coalition in blocking Labor's signature Housing Australia Future Fund worth $10 billion last night in the Upper House. There could be another vote we're hearing potentially this morning. Will you block it again?
First things to say is there was no block. Labor tried to gag debate on the housing bill after 45 minutes of discussion and force it on for a vote before negotiations had finished. And look, let's be clear, this is not $10 billion for housing. They're getting $10 billion, gambling on the stock market via the Future Fund and hoping to spend only the returns on housing. Our point is that last year it lost 1.2% and would have lost $120 million and we wouldn't have not seen a cent spent on housing. Now, they found money to guarantee it for stadiums, for the nuclear submarines, for tax cuts, in the stage 3 tax cuts. Our point is that in the middle of the worst housing crisis in generations, we should also be guaranteeing public money to be spent on public and affordable housing. And it is distressing that I saw some people online from the Labor Party talking about blocking, and that's an irresponsible way to frame what they actually were doing, which was killing the debate on a bill that is deeply flawed and will see the housing crisis get worse.
Labor last night agreed to index the amount spent on housing to inflation from 2029-2030, so I'm guessing that wasn't enough to get you over the line.
I'm sorry, but indexing a cap that's not even a guaranteed amount from 2029 does not put roofs over people's heads right now who are sleeping in their cars. That says to me that they're not taking this seriously. Let's put the numbers on the table. There are 640,000 families or households right now in need of a social or affordable home across the country. That number is going to increase by 75,000 over the next 5 years, and that's before you get to the millions of renters right now who are one rent increase away from eviction or severe financial stress. This is the worst housing crisis Australia has faced in a long time. And it's actually quite important that we start to take this seriously. Indexing a cap that's not guaranteed from 2029 is a slap in the face for the people who want homes on the ground right now. And that's what we could be doing, by the way, because the Greens have said we will pass a bill that guarantees billions of dollars spent on public and affordable housing and a plan to coordinate a freeze on rent increases.
Max, but isn't this progress? I mean, the Greens have a history of doing this. In 2009, the Greens voted against the carbon pollution reduction scheme because it wasn't everything they wanted all at once, and it's claimed that hundreds of millions of tonnes of carbon emissions would have been saved from going into the atmosphere if the Greens at that time had voted for it. Now it seems like you might be doing the same thing, but for the housing crisis.
Look, that's just a silly Labor talking point. Over this term of Parliament alone, we have passed the Safeguard Bill, the NRF, we've passed cheaper childcare, we've negotiated on all sorts of things with Labor. Our concern on this instance is Labor has not offered a single extra cent of guaranteed funding for public or affordable housing, or done anything for the over 5 million renters right now are in housing stress.
But it is increasing supply, and that's the main thing.
They're not taking this seriously.
It's the Jackie Lambie network successfully put a floor on a minimum of 1,200 homes per state for their support, and now they're voting for it. So why can't you have sensible negotiations and meet halfway instead of scuttling the whole thing because it's not everything you want all at once? Isn't progress about small steps? Once you have the ball rolling, then you can pressure the government to do more later.
Unfortunately, I think Lambie has been misled in this instance. In the budget, there was no extra funding to guarantee those 1,200 homes. And in fact, the deal, it seems that all it is that if the fund is able to build that many homes, big if, by the way, because last year the Future Fund lost 1.2% and the stock market's pretty shaky at the moment, the world economy is as well, then there'll be 1,200 homes in each state. But let's be clear, Tasmania alone is losing 1,020 affordable rentals under the NRAS scheme because the government is ending funding for that. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And at the end of that 5 years, Tasmania will see only net increase in maybe 100 homes, more people sleeping in their cars, more people waiting for social housing.
I understand what you're saying, but Max, I understand what you're saying.
In a budget where they found $4.2 billion, in a budget where they found $2 billion for a surplus, how is it that they can't find extra money to spend directly on public and affordable housing?
This is probably the most serious problem facing the country right now. Will you be happy if it fails in its current form?
Oh, absolutely not. Well, that's why we stopped Labor from trying to force it on for a vote, because we want to negotiate. And let's be clear, we've put $5 billion a year on the table. We're happy to negotiate on that number. But right now, Labor are coming back and saying zero. That's not a negotiation, and it doesn't say to us that they're taking this seriously. Now, we hoped that the federal budget would contain items to seriously tackle the housing crisis. The reality is it didn't, and so now this housing bill is literally our last chance in this term of Parliament to force Labor to act, because they have given no indication that they are treating this crisis seriously, and so we feel compelled to make them take it seriously and negotiate properly, to negotiate a package that actually starts to put roofs over people's heads. Bottom line, even if this bill passed today, we wouldn't see a single home built probably until after the next federal election in 2025. Like, that is not taking the crisis seriously. For the 640,000 families right now who need a home, for the millions of renters right now who are contemplating one rent increase more will kick them onto the streets or sleeping on a friend's couch, that's not a solution. Now, we're a wealthy country. They found $4.2 billion for a surplus. There's billions of dollars that could be spending right now on building public and affordable housing, which, by the way, the previous Rudd and Gillard governments did find $5 billion to spend on social housing, and they actually built a lot of it. We just can't understand why they can't enact solutions that have been used not only before in Australia, but have been used around the country and around the world to tackle the housing crisis. Look, the solutions are there, and the only barrier is Labor's intransigence.
Okay, Max Chandler-Mather, really appreciate you coming on First Edition this morning. Thank you.
Pleasure for having me. Thanks.